Hey guys, welcome back! Better Than a Let's Play episode 31. I'm Enigmius. And today we're continuing with something that I've kind of had in the back of my mind for a while. This is the testificate turbine. We're not bricking it up because we've given up on it. We're getting ready to add a fake wire mesh wall. Obviously, it's not a real wire mesh wall because it's not made out of wires, but we're going to try and make it look sort of like that, if that gives you an idea of exactly what we're aiming for. Now, I'm using cobblestone to wall this up because it's just temporary. We're going to be using micro blocks, the smallest strips that you can get, the narrowest ones, made out of stone, to produce this sort of simulated effect. And in order to do that, we kind of need something to stick them to temporarily, just to get things started. Now, it came out with this interesting X effect from that one sort of piece that was sticking out at the end, which I kind of like, and I think I'm going to use that in a future build somewhere. Not necessarily an X shape, but just having that sort of gap and sort of that cutout is kind of neat. I was surprised that I almost wanted to leave that there because I liked it, but it just wouldn't make sense to have all the other fun things going on inside the turbine and then brick it all up so there's just little slits to look through. Now you can see we've already started putting the mesh into place, and it's a really simple process, especially with the forged micro blocks, because you can put more than one block in the same space. So we put one strip down the left side of one of the block faces that we're working with, and one strip along the top side. And that's it. That's all we do for each block face. And then when they come together, when you place them side by side like that, you get the square effect with as much open space in between the strips as possible. We could have done the top, the bottom, the left, and the right of each block that we're working with, that we're sticking them to, and it would have had the same square effect. It just would have been less open space because we'd be using twice as many blocks. So it's a really simple process. But one of the things that I encountered is that around the X area, I didn't have what I needed in order to stick the blocks, the strips, into place. So every once in a while, at this stage, you'll see me putting those hardened dirt blocks into place, and that's just giving me something to stick the strips to so that I can put them into place, then get rid of the blocks, and they're where they need to be, even though they didn't have anything behind them to stick them to originally. Especially working with them when they're this small, they're kind of finicky, and it's just so much easier to have a backdrop to stick them to. You might be surprised. The only way to find out for sure is to try something like this yourself, because it's actually a lot of fun, and it adds a layer of creativity to the building that you can't. There's only so much you can do with the same size cubes over and over and over again. But as soon as you start throwing in different shapes and different sizes within that cube, it gets kind of interesting. Now this, I wouldn't say that I was getting frustrated with placing the strips in the X. I was not planning ahead far enough when I was doing it. So I decided to put all of the blocks in that I need to stick them in, and then do the X parts now so that I just have the walled areas that I can put the strips on, because that's pretty relaxing. You don't have to think too hard about what you're doing. What I was finding before I put all the blocks in place first was that I would put strips on a block, and then I would realize that I needed a block on that block so that I could put strips on the block beside it. So I'd have to take the strips off, put the strips beside it, take the block off, and then put the strips back. So as you can see, it's better to just plan ahead and get them all in place so that you can put the strips in once and then be done with it. Now, one of the things that I was really eager to do was get enough of this simulated wire mesh wall into place that I could go around and start knocking down the cobblestone and see what it ultimately looks like when it's done, because that's sort of the deciding factor of whether or not this whole project was worthwhile, and whether or not it looks any good. So I let myself in through the wall. I just knocked a couple of pieces of cobblestone out of it, and then as soon as I started breaking down the cobblestone, you can see it actually looks kind of like a wire mesh kind of wall. Normally people don't make walls out of wire mesh. I don't want to call it like a fence or something like that, because that doesn't seem to fit either, but you get what I'm saying. Is it's got that sort of crisscrossed little thin strips. It looks like overlapping wires. So that was kind of nice to actually build something and have it turn out the way we wanted without having to tweak too much or rethink too much of anything. And once we get all of the cobblestone out of there, It actually, I find it helps the interior because it makes it harder to see just a little bit, just enough that it's harder to pick out the little imperfections and the little design flaws inside that might detract from the build. Like, for example, the blades, a little bit clunky, and I could use microblocks to smooth them out a little bit more. I could change the shape of them, but I don't really, to be honest, I don't really feel like going back and replacing the edges of every blade inside, because there's 12 blades, and that's a lot of edges. Basically, the front and the back edge would mean 24 edges that I'd have to replace. Or we could just put a wire mesh grill in front of the whole thing, and you won't really notice that they're kind of clunky so much. So that was sort of the first part of this whole project, at least this stage of the project in this episode, was getting these wire meshes in place. And once I've got the X-shaped bits in place, it's a hell of a lot easier to just go back on the wall and kind of space out a little bit, relax, do whatever, get them in there. And then the other thing that I wanted to do today was smooth out the inside of the cylinder for the turbine. Now, there were kind of pros and cons in terms of the order that I was doing things, whether I did the wire mesh first and then the smoothing second. The problem with doing the smoothing first, where it would be easier to see because the mesh wouldn't be in the way, and then the wire mesh afterwards, is just the number of things that I would have to put in place temporarily and then pull out and then replace and meddle with just to get the whole thing done. And I decided to err on the side of convenience. I'm just going to be honest. I decided to go with the easier option for me, which was doing the mesh first, and then you'll still be able to see the smoothing inside, and you'll also be able to see it with the added benefit of the minor obscured view from the wired mesh, just because it's still Minecraft and there's only so much you can do to smooth blocky edges. But we're going to do everything that we can just to kind of distract the eye from, especially in the corners where the X pieces meet, just kind of distract from the blockiness there. And we're just using microblocks. We're using half slabs, quarter slabs, and 1/8 slabs. Covers in panels. I always get the two confused exactly which they are, but you get the idea. And we're just kind of moving along, putting them in place, sort of cutting each edge in half, if that makes any sense to you. So right where the X's meet the corners of the cylinder there, like you see that front X all across the front, and then it meets in the corners, that's a good place to put in a column strip that instead of a whole block edge, you get a half block edge. If that's not making any sense at all, that's fine. The easiest thing you can do is look at what we've got there now in the lower left corner where I'm working versus directly across in the lower right corner. Already you can see that smoothing effect because we're just cutting the edges in half using the different pieces and whatnot. And then we'll get to the flat sides, the top, the bottom, the left, and the right. That's where we start kind of tapering off with the different thicknesses of microblocks. The easiest thing to do is just let you watch and enjoy, because I've kind of described what we're doing and there's only so much you can do to describe what, and you can see how it goes together and what it looks like when it's done. So the next episode, there's one of two things we can do. We can continue down building the next layer of structures underneath the turbine, or we can add the breeding wings to the upper layers so that we can start moving testificates in and have them make all the babbies and fill out our testificate army to work the turbine for us. I don't know. What do you want from me? Either way, we've still got some stuff to do, and things are kind of shaping up. I'm happy with the way they're looking. So if you want to be notified when I add that next video, the easiest way to do that is to subscribe to my channel. You can also be notified by following me on the Twitters at Enigmius1 and on Google plus Enigmius1. So leave your comments and feedback below, guys. Thanks for watching, and take care.